Well, thank you very much, all four of you, for turning up this afternoon. If you'd like to have a look at the other side of this screen, there's about 120 people sitting around there. So there must be something really, really interesting going on around there. But we'll try and make your lunchtime a little bit more enjoyable. You still got time to go and get sandwiches or coffee or a picnic if you want to. But welcome, good afternoon. I want to ask a question first of all of the small but very select audience that's here. That do we understand what training clients are, what training systems may be? No? Well, that's obviously got to another few people who have decided not to stay on for the rest of the afternoon. Do we understand what training clients are? Do any of us actually use training clients as part of our training activity? A version of the system that's used to be able to train users in the use of a particular business application. You do. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Adrian. The rest of you might want to go off and do something else, and Adrian and I will have a chat about what we're going to talk about this afternoon. There are a number of issues with the use of training clients. So what I want to do this afternoon, very briefly, is to look at some of those issues in terms of some of the problems that can arise, some of the costs that can arise through the use of training clients, and look at a possible solution to that can be both a lot more effective and a lot more economic in terms of usage. Now, I think Adrian will be able to identify with some of these issues. I think some of you others may find that a little bit more difficult. First of all, who are we? I work for Assima UK Limited. Assima is a technology and services organisation that work with organisations that are going through technology-driven change. So we're in the business of working with organisations to ensure that the people that are using new applications and new systems within that organisation are both competent and confident in the use of those systems and the associated business processes. And we provide both technology and services to ensure that the return on investment is made through the people being able to use their new environments effectively. And to be able to do that, as I say, we provide both training and technology to support that. Now, traditionally, one of the ways in which some of that training is provided is to provide people with access to a training system, a version of the system where they can actually practice and get used to using their new environments. Now, in terms of being able to do that, there are a number of issues involved in using training clients. And what I want to do is to look at some of those issues and then look at a possible solution in terms of some of the Assima technology that can help support an environment that looks, feels and acts like a training client. So what I want to have a look at is really the curse of the training client in terms of the management and in terms of the cost. First of all, the cost. A training client is a very expensive way of developing an environment for people to be able to learn and to train. It's a copy of the live system that's provided with its own data for people to be able to use in a way in which they can start to get used to using the new systems environment. But it is a very expensive alternative. In terms of its reliability, you've got the reliability issues in exactly the same way as you've got the reliability issues of working with a live system. It has to be maintained. It has to be kept up. If you can imagine that you're running a particular classroom event, and what you've got are 15 people from all around the UK, or it might be all around Europe, attending that event. What you've got to ensure is that system is up and available to you. Now, it's quite often the case that it's not going to be. That the technology is going to let you down, particularly when you think that the training is going to be done quite often before a system goes live. So it's an unreliable system to start with in that particular part of its generation. So we've always got the problem in terms of the reliability of the system being available within the classroom environment for people to be able to learn in the first place. It's also the case that within those training courses, we need to have the bandwidth to be able to get access to the systems. And that's going to apply right across the piece in terms of every single machine that's going to have access to that training client. Now, it is the case that some of the organisations that we've worked with and are working with now, they're working in areas where bandwidth is of a premium. One particular charity we're working with at the moment, not that they're working at the North Pole, but they're working in remote places in Africa. Another is running a prison on Christmas Island in Australia, where access to their network is very, very limited. And to be able to access a training client and have the reliability of knowing that the bandwidth is available to you is something that can be very expensive in terms of ensuring that it's there, and again is unreliable in terms of making sure that it's there when you want it and how you want it. So in terms of training in remote locations, you've got the reliability issues in terms of the systems itself, and you've got the reliability issues in terms of the availability of the bandwidth for the people to be able to access the systems, to be able to learn what they should be doing within those systems environments. Now, that can cause issues in its own right in terms of the confidence they're going to have to be able to use those systems. Because if we're talking about a new systems environment where what we want people to do is to gain both the competence and the confidence to be able to use those systems, to know those systems are not going to be available to them, to know those systems are going to be going down when they don't want them to go down, is not going to create the sort of confidence that's required in those people to ensure that they're going to be able to use the systems effectively when it comes to using them in a live environment. So all of these issues that we've gone through so far are really, really important in terms of being able to present that confidence to a group of people that you're going to be relying on to be able to use systems effectively and be able to provide the business benefits at the end of the day. One of the other big issues with the use of training clients is that the way in which they use data. In that, if you've got a training environment, you need to be able to use data that's going to be available just to the trainers. Only this morning we were talking to somebody that is a client of ours from one of the big four banking environments, and they were saying that before they actually started using our technology, bearing in mind this is a bank, they were having to use systems that were live systems for training, with live customer data within that training environment, which is a very, very dangerous thing to do in terms of confidentiality, and also again in terms of access to that data. So in terms of training clients, it presents a big cost and a big issue that every time you use that training environment, you have to renew the data. There's cost involved in that, and there's also time involved in that. And again, it is the case that every time you run a new course in a new location for a new group of people, you have to again use a new set of data. The other issue with data is that once you've used it, you've used it. So within a training environment, if, for example, you're doing a purchase order, once you've used the data for that purchase order once, then you have to renew it again the next time you go back and you run that training to take people through the development of that purchase order. So again, a huge overhead in terms of both the administration and also the cost of managing that data set environment. Any questions from the four of you so far? Adrian doesn't believe me. Have a look. There's nobody behind you. Okay, let's have a look and see what it means to the users. Now, you know, we're all professional trainers or work in a professional training environment, so we don't really mean this. The aim is, in terms of any new application environment, is to be able to ensure that that user is both competent and confident in the use of the new systems environment. So you recognise that as well. So every new class means new people, new names, that again all have to be loaded into your new training environment. So it's not only the data that's going to be used, it's also the administration and the management of loading up every time a training client is used within a classroom environment, loading it with new usernames, new data, to ensure that they can get the experience that they need to be able to go through it. And again, with those new users, what we want them to do is to learn by the experience they're going to have. And a lot of that means learning by making mistakes. The issue in terms of using a training client is that if they make mistakes, it's actually very difficult for them to go back. Bear in mind that what you're using is a live system, and a live system is, the majority of the time, sequential. You're going through a process, and once you've gone through that process, more often than not, it's very difficult to go back. So if somebody makes a mistake in terms of the work that they're doing, it quite often takes them down a path that they can't come back from. And because, again, you're using a unique system, a live system, it's very difficult then to be able to take them back and to show them what they should have been able to do. So again, it's not an environment that breeds confidence in people in terms of the way in which they're working. So it's very difficult when you've actually gone through something and somebody says, how did you do that? So you can say, I did it by doing this, this and this. What you can't do generally is to go back, press the buttons and say, this is how I did it, by doing it again. Because you've used the data, you've used the process, you have to move on. Any questions so far? Okay. One more issue. Maintenance. I worked on a project a few years ago where we had a training client that had to be kept up to date with the live system. Again, bearing in mind that what we're talking about are normally systems under development. So in terms of the training client, it's normally 2 or 3 steps behind the live system. I had to ask the systems integrator to update the training environment in line with the live system on about a monthly basis. The systems integrator wanted £32,000 a time to update that training client to keep it in line with the live system. To be able to have an environment where people are going to be, again, competent and confident in the use of a new systems environment, it is absolutely vital that that system is kept up to date with the developments in the live system. Because if you don't, when it comes to using that live system, again, the business benefits from that live system, what you're going to get are people that say, well, that wasn't there, that's not the system I trained on, that particular field wasn't there, that particular piece of data wasn't what I was expecting. So to be able to keep it up to date with the live system is very, very important. But it's very, very, and can be very, very expensive. And also, as well as being expensive, more often than not, very low down in terms of the priorities that the systems integrator or the systems team have in terms of keeping the training clients up to date. In terms of that maintenance, these are figures that have been gleaned from various sources, but all of them say that the cost of maintaining a system is actually appreciably more than the initial development of that system. It's very easy to get a copy of the live system initially for your training client, but to keep it up to date and to be able to maintain it can be very, very expensive. So what's the answer? Well, at the end of the day, there's no getting round the fact that to be trained in the system that you're going to be using within a live environment is the ideal. However, as we've seen, to be able to use those training clients, there are a number of issues involved in terms of both data, in terms of the management and the administration, in terms of the bandwidth, in terms of the reliability of the systems, in terms of the availability of the systems. What we have is the next best alternative. An environment that looks, feels, and acts just like the live system, but doesn't have any of the issues that we've been talking about in terms of maintenance, in terms of data, in terms of reliability, in terms of availability. Now, if we've got an environment that we can use as a substitute for our training client, although that's the perfect solution, the cost and the benefits of being able to use a substitute far outweigh the use of a training client and present an environment where the users can develop their confidence and can develop their competence in the use of new systems or updated systems environments. That alternative is the Assima training suite. What the Assima training suite presents us with is, as I say, an environment that looks, feels, and acts just like the live system. It's built with access to the live system, with the data being replaced with dummy data that can be used repeatedly. It acts in a way in which you become the user. It acts in a way that is able to direct you through what you should be doing within an application. As I say, it looks, feels, and acts just like the real thing, in that it's not a picture, it's not a set of screenshots, it's actually a live clone of the system itself. So it's scalable. It gets over those issues in terms of reliability and availability by being there 24/7, by being available to the users to be able to be used both within a classroom environment, but also, just as importantly and more importantly, outside of that classroom environment, so they can go into the system and practice at their own pace. Practice at their own pace in terms of being able to build their confidence, because they're not going to be able to break the system in the same way as they possibly can with a live training client. It's also trackable. One of the issues in terms of being able to use a training client is that it's very difficult to keep record of how people have done in terms of their competence in being able to go through various processes and transactions. With the Assima training system, we're able to evaluate people, to look at how people are building their competence in the use of those new application areas or those upgraded application areas. So it's trackable, and also, if we need it, certifiable in terms of being able to release certificates to be able to boost people's competence and confidence in the use of those systems. If you make a mistake within a live systems environment, within your training client, as I was saying, that can have two effects. It can certainly knock your confidence in terms of, I'm not doing this right. But it also means that you can't go back and put it right. With the Assima training environment, what we have is an environment where you can make mistakes. And we actually promote the idea of being able to learn by making mistakes, being able to build confidence by seeing what can go wrong and how you can actually put it right, by looking at the alternative ways of going about a particular transaction. What's the best way of completing a task? Well, quite often, particularly with a complex system like SAP, what you have are a number of routes that you can follow through a particular business process by going through different ways of completing a transaction. Again, if you're using a training client and a training environment, you can only go one way because you're then completing that transaction. With this environment, what you can do is take a step back from that and go through the alternative routes. And go through the alternative routes by going through one, going back, and looking at the different alternatives that can be applied. So again, it's a very good way of being able to show people the tricks of the trade in terms of the use of a particular application and the use of a particular business process. Again, because what we've got is an environment where we can use and reuse the data, it means that we can go back in and look at all of the different combinations that you can use in terms of the use of that data. And you can go back and say, show me that part again. How did you do that? How did you actually go about what you've actually done there? Being able to press a back button and say, I can show you that, I can explain that, and again being able to build competence and confidence in the use of those transactions. And again, with alternative paths, are there any other ways in which I can find the information that I'm looking for? Yes, and we can go back and look at it. Again, with a training client, that's not possible. I can hear from the crowds next door that that's about my time up. In terms of the use of training clients, there is an alternative. There's an alternative to the cost. There's an alternative in terms of being able to provide the benefits that should be provided, and that alternative comes through in the use of the Assima technology and the Assima training suite. If you'd like to know more about what we've been able to describe briefly this afternoon, we're just around the corner there, and we can show you these some of these clones in a live environment, so that you can see the sorts of benefits that can accrue. Are there any questions? No, there's not a trial version, Adrian, but what we do is we work with organisations to do proof of concept, so that we'll come along and effectively work with you to build an example within your own environment, so you can see that it works properly within your own environment. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.